Welcome to Airborne Atlas, where we explore the giants of the sky and the stories that redefined human flight. Today, we are embarking on a journey through time and engineering to look at an aircraft that didn't just fly routes, it changed the very rules of how we cross oceans. The Boeing 767 is often overshadowed by its bigger brother, the 747, or its more modern successor, the 787 Dreamliner, but make no mistake, without the 767, the aviation world as we know it today simply would not exist. It was the aircraft that broke the monopoly of 3- and 4-engine jets on transoceanic routes, proving that 2 engines were more than enough to safely carry hundreds of people across the Atlantic and Pacific. This is the story of a twin-engine revolution, a masterpiece of 1980s technology that continues to haul freight and fuel the world's militaries today. If you are an aviation geek or just someone who loves the marvels of human ingenuity, you are in the right place. Before we push back from the gate and dive into the technical brilliance of the 767, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a flight with Airborne Atlas. Your support helps us keep these deep dive documentaries flying high, and we have a lot of ground, and sky, to cover today. The story of the Boeing 767 begins in the late 1970s, a period of immense transition for the aerospace industry. At that time, airlines were facing a double-edged sword. The 1973 oil crisis had made fuel-hungry jets like the Boeing 707 and the Douglas DC-8 incredibly expensive to operate, while the massive Boeing 747 was often too large for many routes, leaving seats empty and profits thin. Boeing realized they needed something in the middle, a Goldilocks aircraft that was bigger than a narrow body but smaller and more efficient than a jumbo jet. This led to the 7x7 program, which eventually split into 2 distinct projects, the narrow-body 757 and the wide-body 767. The 767 was designed to be Boeing's first wide-body twin jet, a radical departure from the norm. At the time, if you wanted to fly a wide-body, you were looking at the 4-engine 747 or the 3-engine DC-10 and L1011 TriStar. The idea of a twin-engine wide-body was met with skepticism by some, but Boeing's engineers were convinced that the future lay in efficiency, not just raw power. One of the most unique aspects of the 767 is its fuselage width. Boeing's designers chose a semi-wide diameter of 15 feet 6 inches. This was specifically calculated to allow for a 7-abreast seating arrangement in economy class, typically in a 2-3-2 configuration. This was a stroke of genius for passenger comfort. In a 2-3-2 layout, 86% of the passengers have either a window or an aisle seat, and there is only one middle seat per row. For decades, this has made the 767 one of the most beloved aircraft among frequent flyers, as it avoids the cramped sardine feeling of modern 10-abreast 777s or 9s-abreast 787s. The narrower fuselage also meant less aerodynamic drag compared to the massive 747, which contributed to its impressive fuel economy. Every inch of the 767 was a balance between capacity and performance, a theme that would define its entire career. As development progressed into the early 1980s, Boeing introduced a level of technology that was light years ahead of previous generations. The 767 was the first Boeing aircraft to feature a digital glass cockpit. Instead of a wall of hundreds of mechanical dials, gauges, and steam gauges that required a third crew member, the flight engineer, to monitor, the 767 used 6 cathode ray tube CRT screens to display flight data. This allowed the cockpit to be operated by just 2 pilots, significantly reducing the overhead costs for airlines. This transition wasn't just about saving money, it was about safety. The digital systems provided more accurate information and reduced pilot workload during critical phases of flight. It's hard to imagine now, but in 1982, this was the equivalent of moving from a typewriter to a high-powered computer. The 767 and its sister ship, the 757, shared a common type rating, meaning pilots could fly both aircraft with minimal additional training, a feature that made the 767 an irresistible package for major carriers like United, Delta, and American Airlines. When the first 767-200 took to the skies on September 26, 1981, it was the start of a new era, but the real test was yet to come. In those days, a rule known as the 60-minute rule prevented twin-engine aircraft from flying more than an hour away from an emergency landing field. This meant that twin jets were effectively banned from flying directly across the Atlantic, as they would have to hug the coastline of Greenland and Iceland, making the routes inefficient. Boeing knew the 767 was reliable enough to change this. They pushed for ETOPS, extended range twin-engine operational performance standards. The joke in the industry at the time was that ETOPS stood for engines turn or passengers swim, reflecting the nervousness people felt about crossing the ocean with only two engines. However, the 767's engines, specifically the Pratt & Whitney JT9D and later the GE CF6, proved to be incredibly robust. In 1985, the FAA granted TWA a 120-minute ETOPS rating for the 767, allowing it to fly directly from the US to Europe. This was the death knell for the three-engine wide-bodies and the beginning of the point-to-point travel model that defines our world today. The success of the 767-200 led Boeing to develop the stretched 767-300, which added about 21 feet to the length of the plane. This version could carry more passengers and cargo, and when the extended-range ER version was released, it became the definitive long-haul workhorse. The 767-300 is, quite arguably, the most successful variant, with a range of over 6,000 nautical miles. It allowed airlines to connect cities like London to Cincinnati or Manchester to New York profitably, routes that were too small for a 747 but too long for a 737. It became the backbone of the Atlantic, at one point performing more transatlantic crossings than any other aircraft in history. Even as newer planes like the Airbus A330 entered the market, the 767-300 held its ground thanks to its lower weight and proven reliability. It was a plane that did its job quietly, efficiently, and without the drama often associated with new aircraft launches. The 767's story is also punctuated by some of the most incredible displays of airmanship in history, perhaps none more famous than the Gimli glider. In 1983, an Air Canada 767 ran out of fuel at 41,000 feet due to a metric conversion error. With both engines dead and the cockpit screens going dark, the pilots managed to glide the massive widebody to an old military airstrip in Gimli, Manitoba, which had been converted into a racetrack. Using a forward slip maneuver usually reserved for small Cessna planes, the captain landed the 767 safely with no fatalities. This incident, while terrifying, actually boosted the 767's reputation because it proved the aircraft's incredible aerodynamic gliding capabilities and structural integrity. It showed the world that even in the worst-case scenario, the 767 was a forgiving and well-engineered machine. As the 1990s rolled around, Boeing introduced the final major passenger variant, the 767-400ER. This version was even longer and featured raked wingtips and a completely redesigned interior and cockpit inspired by the Boeing 777. While it was a highly capable aircraft, it faced stiff competition from the Airbus A330-200 and only saw major orders from Delta and Continental, now United. However, the technology developed for the 400ER served as a vital bridge toward the next generation of aircraft. While the passenger versions of the 767 began to see a decline in orders in the mid-2000s as the 787 Dreamliner was announced, the 767 refused to fade into the sunset. Instead, it found a second, and perhaps even more important, career in the world of logistics and defense. Today, if you look at the skies over any major global hub at night, you will see the 767-300F freighter working harder than ever. The 767 is the perfect cargo plane. Its fuselage can hold 2 rows of standard containers, and its operational costs are much lower than larger freighters. Companies like FedEx, UPS, and Amazon Air built entire networks around the 767. In fact, Boeing still produces the 767 freighter today, long after the last passenger version was delivered. It is a rare sight to see a 40-year-old design still in active production, but the 767's utility is so high that there is simply no direct replacement for it in the mid-size cargo market. It is the plane that delivers your packages across continents while the rest of the world sleeps, a silent guardian of global commerce. But the 767's versatility doesn't end with cargo. The military saw the potential of this airframe for specialized missions. This led to the creation of the KC-46 Pegasus, the United States Air Force's newest aerial refueling tanker. Based on the 767-200ER fuselage with 767-400ER wings and 787 cockpit displays, the KC-46 is designed to fuel the fighters and bombers of the future. The 767 airframe was chosen because it provides the perfect balance of fuel capacity, fuel burn, and the ability to operate from shorter runways than a 777 or 747 base tanker. Additionally, Japan uses the E-767, an airborne warning and control system AWACS version, which carries a massive rotating radar dome on its back. Whether it's carrying tourists to Hawaii, delivering medical supplies to remote regions, or refueling stealth fighters mid-air. The 767 has proven to be one of the most adaptable platforms in history. Reflecting on the legacy of the Boeing 767, we see an aircraft that was a bridge between the old and the new. It took the aviation industry from the era of mechanical complexity and four-engine dependence into the era of digital precision and twin-engine efficiency. It paved the way for the 777 and the 787, but it also carved out its own unique niche that no other plane has quite been able to fill. It's a plane of firsts, the first glass cockpit widebody, the first to fly ETOPS routes, and the first to show that a widebody could be both comfortable for passengers and incredibly economical for airlines. Its longevity is a testament to the thousands of engineers, mechanics, and pilots who have dedicated their careers to keeping this Atlas in the air. As we wrap up our look at the Boeing 767, it's clear that this aircraft's impact on our world is immeasurable. From its innovative 232 seating that made long flights bearable to its role in revolutionizing global logistics, the 767 is a true icon of the jet age. It might not have the hump of a 747 or the elegant wings of a 787, but its steady, reliable service has made it a favorite for airlines for over 4 decades. It is a reminder that in the world of aviation, reliability and efficiency are the ultimate forms of beauty. The next time you see a 767 on the tarmac or look up at a contrail high above, you'll know that you're looking at a piece of history that is still very much alive and well. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive here at Airborne Atlas. We hope you enjoyed learning about the Boeing 767 as much as we enjoyed bringing its story to life. If you found this video insightful, please give it a like. It really helps the channel grow and allows us to create more high-quality aviation content for you. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you're always the first to know when we release a new documentary. We want to hear from you. Have you ever flown on a 767? What was your experience like, and which airline's livery do you think suits it best? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing from our community of aviation enthusiasts. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies, and thank you for flying with Airborne Atlas. Safe skies and happy landings.